Hey, welcome back. Hey, how y'all doing today? Welcome back to the channel. I'm Jesse. Another installment of High History. Got something for you today. I'm gonna get off into a lot today. I'm gonna deal with some guys today that don't really get the recognition I think they should. So I'm gonna put their names out there today. Maybe it could lead you to do the research. Get another link full of picture of your history. Kind of see us in a different light. Most of the time, we always portray as slaves. When it comes to Black History Month, they only talk about either the civil rights part of it or the slavery part of it. Nobody never really go back into the part of when we weren't slaves, or at least when we was in a better position than just being slaves. I think that's important too when we acknowledging our history. So today I'm gonna put a couple people out there, and like I say, they probably ain't really new, but it's a lot of myth around them because I had heard of them when I first started doing research. I heard of them, but it was all kind of myths around them, and I couldn't even find no pictures on 'em. Not no accurate ones anyway. Just like the same old images that they use for all Black people. But I chose them, and I'm put them out there because dealing with them is a pivotal point in our history, the history of Black people here in America, or Black people period. This is the foundation of it all. But Christopher Columbus. Christopher Columbus, we all know who Christopher Columbus was, discovered America or whatever. And there's a lot of stories about him that he wasn't no real good sailor or that he was a drunkard and all that. So how can a man be a drunkard and go down in history as one of the greatest discoverers of all time? He did. But I ain't really want to talk about him. He important to this because the brothers that I'm speaking of, the Nino brothers. I repeat that, the Nino brothers. Pedro, Francisco, and Juan. And they was some West African slaves that was on the boat with Columbus. One of them steered the Santa Maria, and the other brother drove one of the ships, the La Nina. If you look these ships up, you'll see who the captains and the crew were. But in there, they got Spanish names, so you probably think they ain't Black people, but they Black people, and they was in Spain. But like I say, that's a pivotal part in the whole transatlantic slave trade when you're dealing with Spain. When you look into Spain and Portugal, it'll open up. That's the doorway to the whole transatlantic slave trade was through Portugal and Spain, and that's how Christopher Columbus and that's how these boys ended up with Christopher Columbus. They were slaves in Spain, or they people had came there as slaves, but they respected sellers, and if it wasn't from them, a lot of people wouldn't even co-sign Columbus ships because he didn't really have the navigational knowledge to be taking no voyage like that. But when the brothers got aboard, everybody knew they prowess when it comes to the sea. They were good sailors. They was because they learned sailing. They learned sailing on the coast of West Africa. One of them even taught the son of King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella of Spain. He taught their son how to make maps. Because if you dig into the history of Spain, you'll learn that once upon a time, Spain and Portugal was one country. One country. And Portugal seceded from the kingdom of Leon. And but around this time, hearing the navigator, and he highlighted in history as like one of the greatest discoverers, explorers. But what made him famous was he found a route to the west coast of Africa. He's the first European to touch the western coast of Africa. That's what made him important in European circles. He opened up them trade routes. Henry, another name, Henry the Navigator. Henry the Navigator and the Nino brothers. All they wrapped up in a whole historical story right there on the Iberian Peninsula dealing with slavery. So you look him up, look up Henry the Navigator, and he gonna lead you to the Nino brothers. Or you'll figure out you could figure out how Africans get into Spain in 1492. 1492 when Columbus came to America and landed on the island of Haiti, which he called Hispaniola, meaning lands of Spain or Spanish land. It was black people with him. It was some brothers with him, some West Africans, and they weren't slaves. They were navigators. They drove the boat for him. We tend to forget that. Like I say, I had heard the story, but I never had no actual fact or proof until I went to doing the research and find out how they get in there and where they were from and where they were from. 1492. You got the presence of Africans in Spain driving boats and navigating the oceans. The Nino brothers. Look them up. They're your black link. The Nino brothers. That's the link, but I ain't through because in doing research for this, I went so deep and put so many links together and so much that I knew, but I didn't have a whole picture on it. And it all concentrated right there around the Iberian Peninsula in North Africa and how they started going into North Africa and how the Portuguese went in there and established Cape Verde. Cape Verde is a Portuguese colony, but they set up that colony to penetrate the rest of Africa. The Portuguese was the first one, and when they went in there, they brought the Catholic religion with them because they Henry the Navigator was the head of what they call the Knights of the Cross, or another version of the Knights Templar, but basically Christian Crusaders. So when they went in there, they took the Christian religion with them, Catholic religion. So that's how Christianity get in Africa in the 15th century. The Portuguese converted the king of the Congo, and he made it a state religion, converted all his people. Some of them rejected Kempa Vita. You'll read about her and studying the Portuguese and their effects on Africa. But the link they're gonna get you there is the Nino brothers, the African brothers that was on the ships with Columbus when he made his first voyage in 1492 and ended up in Haiti. It was black people with him. So when I say this our country, I don't mean it by no overblown American spirit and that. I mean we was here from the founding of it. When the first European stepped foot here, a black man was with him in Haiti, but the Spanish the ones sent the expeditions up into Florida. First ones to come up in there in Florida. And it was yeah. So you do your history, look that up, take them links and go through there and concentrate right on the Iberian Peninsula. He gonna lead you into North Africa, in the Sahara, and the people that was there, the Berbers, and then you'll understand how Islam get into Africa. Because there was a whole nother slave trade going on before the Europeans started enslaving Africans. You had the trans-Saharan slave trade with the Arabs. 1,000 years before the Europeans even got there, the Arabs were bringing Africans up out of the west of Africa, up into Morocco, and trading them on in with the Romans and all that way back in the ancient days. But they had never got to the inside until hearing the Navigator. And it was another guy. He was a famous explorer, but he was like the first one to come land at what we call Lagos now in Nigeria. But it was the Portuguese. We always look at slavery from the side of the British in our relation to the British. But the British were the first one started selling African. The Portuguese, and it was around. It fit because they needed the labor at the time. It was the plague had just hit Europe. Europe was decimated. They lost over I want to say half of their population, but it was in the millions through the plagues from being just savage. So the age of discovery, they was trying to find roots, spices. They had went through the dark ages where they had no civilization, no books, no knowledge. You know what I'm saying? So they were trying to find a way out of Europe, the search, the sail. And hearing the navigator was important because he found the root. They was always looking for roots because back in the ancient days, Europe was barren. It was barren. Nobody, it wasn't good land. They couldn't grow nothing there. It's not tropical. It's not sunny. It ain't good for nothing. So it's rocky, cold. So in the ancient days, they needed to sustain themselves. They needed to get out of Europe, find other routes, and it led to the age of discovery. That's why the Europeans championed that age so much, because that was their age when they started figuring out that it were other places in the world. But in everybody, we always look at history through that lens, through they discovered other world, but it was already civilizations thriving and living and doing their thing and trading with people and establishing kingdoms before the European. But it led me to all that just dealing with, because I want to know how Africans get on a boat with Columbus. And they weren't slaves, they were driving a boat. If we always were slaves, where they get the knowledge of navigation from, how they knew how to drive the boat. So I started digging and digging, and it took me into Spain and Portugal and the wars that they fought in there, and how it's a strait right there that connect Europe and North Africa. And that's how it started. But the Arab was already exploring them routes through the desert. You know what I'm saying? But you'll get a clear picture when you dig into it. I really said too much because I don't want to confuse you and jumble the information up. I really just came to give you the Nino brothers, and hope that leads you farther and deeper in your studies. You know what I'm saying? I ain't gonna stay on today too long. I just want to put a quick little video out there because I made a commitment that I'm gonna try to do a video a day for the whole Black history. So at the end of Black history, I have a good compilation of Black people, and I always try to choose Black people that ain't usually honored, because the history is so much deeper and bigger than just the one we know about. And the ones we know about only tell part of the story. They only tell the story from the slavery aspect, or from when Britain got in the slaving game. Because you had Black people in Haiti in the 14th century, 15th century. I think it was in 1517, Spain sent 15,000 Africans arrived in Haiti in 1517. This hundreds of years before 1619. We was already in Haiti. And don't ever forget that only difference between a Haitian and what we call an African American is our stops on the route. That's the only difference. We came from the same people. Same people. I got a theory. I feel like because they was out there on the islands, that they was able to retain a little bit more of their African culture, being out there on the island and being in that tropical environment. It wasn't a substitute, but it was like an artificial environment from where they came from. Meaning like they can grow some of the same stuff they grew, and they can live off the land and kind of the same way as they did on the continent. So I think that's how they was able to retain a little bit more of their Africanness than the rest of us. But don't get it twisted, we the same people. Even the people in Brazil. Brazil got the biggest African population outside of the continent of Africa. They are all Africans. Portuguese. Brazil is a Portuguese colony. It was set up to run sugar. It was all about sugar and resources. Then human bodies became part of the economy. And they went to buying and selling and trading in human bodies. But the inception of it is right there in Portugal with Heron the Navigator. If you want to begin to understand The genesis of our story in the transatlantic slave trade started with Henry the Navigator. He was the European that championed for finding a route into the interior of Africa. Henry the Great, Henry the Navigator. But something else stuck out to me while I was researching this. All through Europe, they were fighting wars. Just different tribes fighting wars. I'm looking up these kingdoms, and then when you look at these kingdoms and look at the native people of these kingdoms, they all just dramatic tribes, salvage tribes of white people. So I'm looking at that in relation to what's going on right now. It seems like European civilization always end up in a bloody war, always end because of a bloody war. Rome fell. And another thing I learned is that a lot of this shit is just made up. Like Rome supposed to be started by two brothers that were raised by wolves, Romulus and Remus. That's their origin story. Like that's so crazy. And the Greek origin story, like, but really what it was is that they were just all tribes, and then they started forming like anybody else. It's just like I say, it's the perspective you have when you reading the history. You understand that this ain't black history, this ain't world history, this European history. So when you look at it from that aspect, you try to then you can understand your place in European history, how we get in and how we even start dealing with these people, or how these people start dealing with us. You'll understand the place, the important religion play in it. That's why we can't share no God. We never share the God. So I think that's important because even their name changed because they were Christianized. Like, so religion plays so much a part in our enslavement that it's hard for me to ever accept a religion. But like I said, I ain't gonna keep you too much today. I want to bring that link. I'm gonna reiterate one time, the Nino brothers. Look up the Santa Maria and the La Nina. They were ships that Columbus chartered to the New World. But those were black guys driving them. They call one of them the Moor. But Moor is just turned synonymous with all dark-skinned people. Or dark, at that time, it was used like interchangeable. But it's proven that he was of African ancestry. His mama was a West African slave. But look him up, the Nino brothers. And you be easy. Know your history. Keep reaching out. If it's something that you feel like I can get better on, comment. I would love for you to subscribe and help me keep this thing going. See you next time. High history.